Welcome everyone to this Trinity P3 webinar, Innovating Broadcast Production During a Global Pandemic. My name is Darren Woolley, I'm the CEO of Trinity P3. And before we start, I just want to take you through some housekeeping. First is that we'll be sticking strictly to 1 hour, so we're planning to finish at 15:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can ask questions at any time. While we prefer you to use the Q&A function, you can also use the chat function because this is an interactive conversation, so please feel free to ask questions as we go through. And we are recording the session for future use. Now, I'd like to introduce our expert, and that is not the drip under pressure. That is actually Clive Duncan, Senior Production Consultant at Trinity P3. And I called Clive an expert because he's had many years, and we won't go into how many, Clive, doing almost everything there is possible to do in television and video production, from cameraman to producer, from agency producer to film house to what haven't you done, Clive? Maybe catering?
I haven't done catering and I haven't done much animation, personally.
Well, you are quite animated as a personality. But look, thanks for making time and joining us today.
Okay.
So, we'll just take that off and let's start talking. So, Clive, have you ever had to produce a TV ad at a time when you weren't allowed to have more than 10 people congregating together in public, where you've had to everyone standing 1.5 meters apart, and the ideal recommendation is you should all, including the cast, be wearing masks? Has that ever happened to you in your vast career?
No, never, Darren. This is definitely a first for all of us. Not just me, but for all of us.
So it's reasonable to say this is truly unprecedented in the world of TV production.
I guess you could, yep.
It's interesting because not just in advertising, but in long form, such as TV series and films, a lot of productions have actually shut down as part of this, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Yeah, particularly in America, well, all over the world. Once you get into a certain level of lockdown, people aren't allowed to go to work and people have got to be socially distanced. They've got to wear masks, all the things that come with the various levels of lockdown. So, yeah, it is unprecedented.
It's interesting. I know there was a report that the TV show shot in Melbourne called Wentworth was continuing production during the lockdown, but when they were found out, it's a major occupational health and safety issue, isn't it?
Yes, it is, most definitely. I mean, as we all try and avoid being close to each other or coughing or touching surfaces is the big one, I think. You've got to be very mindful of actually how the disease is spread. And the best way to combat it is to stay apart, stay at home.
But having said that, it doesn't mean that productions should necessarily shut down.
No, not necessarily, not at all. I see it as an opportunity to be innovative and be a bit exploratory in your production techniques, which can bring about some advantages. For instance, you might use a production house that you've never used before because they're interstate where they're only at stage 2 lockdown and they can quite easily do a production, whereas you're in stage 4. And you might discover that these are very talented people that have never got a break because they're parochial, so to speak.
Look, what I want to do, Clive, if you don't mind, is actually go through the production process because you're quite instrumental in presenting our TV production training for quite a few years. Yeah. And that went through literally from concept, budgeting and concept right through to dispatch and delivery. So it'd probably be worthwhile we use that same approach. Yeah. And really consider each of the implications and for you to share with us some opportunities that you see of ways of working around the limitations of COVID-19.
Sure. Okay.
Well, the first one obviously is concept, and we've seen a lot of ads get produced very quickly. In fact, they're called the COVID-19 ads, and I'm just going to try and share this. This is a YouTube video, so we'll just see how this goes. And it's called "Every COVID-19 Commercial Looks the Same."
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978. For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years. In 90 years. Over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you. Nissan has been with you through thick and thin. We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
People.
People. People.
People.
People and family.
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 Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family. Families are families.
Families. Even now. Especially now.
Especially now. Right now.
Now more than ever.
More than ever.
Today, more than ever.
Today, more than ever. At times like this. At times like these. During these difficult times.
In these troubled times.
Challenging times.
Trying times.
In these times of uncertainty.
During this time of great uncertainty.
During these uncertain times.
During these uncertain times. Uncertain times.
In uncertain times. Uncertain times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
This unprecedented moment in our history.
It's time of social distancing.
While things have slowed down. As we turn more inside. While the doors may be closed. While the distance between us has gotten bigger.
The more we stay apart, we still find ways to stay close, even when we're apart.
Even if we can't stand closer than 6 feet.
We can all stay connected to work, school, and most importantly, to each other.
There's still ways to touch each other.
All without leaving the comfort and safety of your home. Without leaving the safety of your home.
From home.
Your home.
At home.
Home. Home. Home. Home.
Home.
Look, I think I'll leave it there because, Clive, you get the drift.
Yeah.
They do all look the same, don't they?
Yep, and they've all got the same message. The advertiser is looking after you and is there for you. So they're using COVID as a springboard to talk about their social credentials.
Well, and demonstrating empathy, I guess, is the brief. You know, let's make our customers feel that we're there for them and we understand the hardships we're all going through together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm interested in the production. You know, what do you think? Because they would have been turned around relatively quickly. You know, they probably were turned around in 4 to 6 weeks or less.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a formula here, isn't there? Existing footage or stock footage,
Stock footage.
a very emotional music track. It's amazing how piano is, the music track of choice.
Yeah.
A earnest voiceover, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
This
And the graphics as well. You know, pointing out, underscoring their message that they're there for you.
But it is probably the easiest, isn't it, if you're in a lockdown situation? There's not much that could go wrong with that type of approach, is there, from a production point of view, I mean?
No, not from a production point of view. It's quite easy. You just ring up the holders of your digital assets and get them to go through them and get an editor to splice them all together. It's pretty straightforward. And that's why they all look the same, because the stock shots are all very similar.
Mm. And the tone and manner. So there's part of this is the brief would have been largely the same from all of those advertisers.
That's right. That's right.
But then the time constraint, the sense of urgency and panic I'd imagine that would have been happening. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We've got to
Yeah.
get something on air in 4 weeks or 3 weeks.
Exactly. We've got to get something out there. Yeah.
So that's probably, we could forgive agencies for not being that creative.
Yeah. Yep, we can. But having said that, I mean, they don't have to do that. They can actually keep going ahead with their brand stories or whatever if they did a bit of creative thinking and did productions. Even though there are many places in lockdown, there are also many places where the lockdown isn't so heavy and film production can still go ahead.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding those places and finding people that you trust to do your production for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had many productions that I used to work in Melbourne quite a bit, but I've done productions in Sydney, New Zealand, Brisbane, all over Australia, and it's nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And for instance, if you decide to shoot in New Zealand for various reasons, and there are many good reasons to shoot in New Zealand, you'll find that the social demographics all look the same, etc., etc. The locations look the same. For all intents and purposes, New Zealand can be Australia very, very easily.
Okay, so Clive, can you think of any concept that a creative may come up with? And I'm sure you've seen thousands during your career, but can you think of any concept that couldn't be produced during this COVID pandemic?
No, not at all, Darren. Even concepts that require large crowds. I mean, we've seen the use of digital cloning of people in many commercials. In fact, all you have to do is look at Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, and half the soldiers on the battlefields are digital clones of, maybe 10 or 20 soldiers, slightly set off in terms of timings, et cetera, et cetera. So even if you need a crowd of 100, it's quite easy to do.
Mm. Okay, well, let's move on to quoting, because, once the concept's finalised, approved by the creative director, heading off to the client or has been to the client and is approved, there'd have to be a quote.
Correct.
Can you see where quoting could be impacted at all by COVID-19?
Not at all. I mean, a simple phone call will get a quote rolling. So if you call up a production company, you might be able to call up your favourite production company and they might go, oh, well, we can't do it because we're in lockdown, but we can use our subsidiary or our sister or brother company in another city, in another state, in another country. So you can sort of deal with your favourite people and get them to quote it. I mean, it's very, very common.
Do you think there's any factors around COVID-19 that would add to cost? Would there need to be additional cost so that, they could accommodate or deal with some of the requirements that we've seen in, not in lockdown, but just in general occupational health and safety?
I can see that if you wanted a particular actor in your TVC, that would create a problem, because it depends on the actor's place of residence, etc., whether they can go to the location or not, or they have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks prior to being at the location. That's the only thing I can think of, is that if you use a well-known face, you will run into problems there. But,
Okay.
If you use the generic mum and dad and the kids, or whatever, or the or comedians. I mean, there's comedians in every city in Australia and New Zealand that can do a marvellous job.
Well, and that's the other thing. You could actually cast a family
Yeah,
whether it's mum and dad and the kids, or dad and dad and the kids, or mum and the kids, depending
That's
on
very-
however you want to define the family. But you
yeah,
can actually cast real families, because families do not necessarily need to stand 1.5 meters away from each other.
that's right. That is right. But if you go to the right place where the lockdowns aren't, if you went to New Zealand, for instance, or Queensland,
Well, not Auckland at the moment, because they've gone back.
yeah,
to
they're
lockdown.
yeah, for 3 days.
Mm.
But you could, you don't actually have to. What you can do is you can get an intimacy into the shoot by shooting them as singles and cutting them together. And it depends on the size of the shot. If you take an extreme close up of a kid and then an extreme close up of his parent, it indicates an intimacy and a closeness, even though they might be standing 3 meters apart. It's like when you shoot reverses in a feature film.
Well,
Where you,
sorry, I've dragged you into shooting, and we're still back at quoting.
Oh,
But let's
okay.
move on to pre-production.
certainly, yeah,
And part of pre-production, obviously, location.
yep.
People can do location searches or have done location searches already. They don't necessarily
That's right.
go out and look for new locations.
Yeah,
do they?
knocking on doors is a thing of the past. I mean, all the good location scouts have databases of every type of interior, exterior, rural situation that you want. They've got it on. They've got it on their database. Now, what you've got to do is check out that it's still available, or if it's an exterior location, you've got to go and check out that there's been no seasonal changes, like the trees have lost their leaves, or a new building's been put up in the meantime, all those sort of things. But location searching is basically an office-based business these days.
The other one is casting, and it's interesting how much casting has actually moved online. I was reading recently that the Right Fit, which is not just for actors and casting, but content makers as well. During COVID, they were getting photographers and models that happened to be couples to actually do whole projects together, shoot things in their own backyard to a brief from a client. So it's really quite interesting now how technology has made the availability of casting people so much more convenient.
Yeah, much more easier. Yeah. It's so all the same things apply. I mean, you go to a casting agent, they've usually got them on a file, and then you decide which ones you want to see, and they can bring them in for an on-camera casting session without being close to them. I mean, everybody can social distance. They can come in and see the receptionist and step back, a bit like going to the doctors in these COVID times or whatever, and go into the studio, and there doesn't even have to be anybody else in the studio, just the camera, and they can be directed from another room or whatever to do their stuff. It's the actual social distancing doesn't have, if you watch your P's and Q's, it doesn't become a problem.
What about wardrobe though, where you need to get fittings and things like that? How do you maintain social distancing for wardrobe? Or is it a matter of getting the talent to provide wardrobe?
Yes, you can do that. They'll charge. Sometimes they'll charge you for it, depending on the talent. But you can get a wardrobe master or mistress to put the various clothes on a rack, and it's a bit like the casting. They say, please put on coat hanger A, and the wardrobe mistress or master doesn't have to stand any closer than 3 meters from them. So it might get a bit difficult if you had to take measurements and things like that. But in this day and age of off the rack clothes, I think you're pretty safe to assume that you can get what you want without having to make it specifically, which would involve tape measures and fittings, etc., etc.
So that could be a problem, but not an insurmountable problem if you're
No,
actually
not at all. Not at all.
That gets me to the next area, which is art department. Now, I know art department props could be anything from just propping, but
Yeah.
it can also be building whole sets.
Yeah.
Obviously, that could be an issue or not.
Well, it depends where you're shooting it. If you're shooting it in a low lockdown state, not a problem. Even even in Melbourne at the moment, where they're in lockdown 4, you're still allowed 4 or 5 builders at the one location or site. So I don't see why that wouldn't apply to set building.
Mm. Yeah, just you'd then have to truck the sets to another state, because if you had more than 5 people in one place, they wouldn't be able to shoot there. But
Yeah,
I get your point.
Get my drift. Yeah.
But also it could all be done remotely as well. Even getting updates on, for instance, building sets could be done the way we are, through video conferencing or video streaming, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the art director at the agency could get half-hourly updates on the progress of the set if he or she wanted to. So there's no problem there. Particularly if it's coming from a low lockdown state or country to a higher lockdown situation. So no difference at all from what goes on now, really.
There's a comment here, common bond may have been COVID 1.0 is more playful than COVID 2.0. Well, and I think that what they're saying is that the lockdown, particularly in Victoria, is much harsher now than it was for the original lockdown. But what you're saying is, well, if there is a market that's particularly locked down, there is no reason why you couldn't produce in another state, for instance, WA, Queensland, even South Australia, because you don't have to travel there anymore to actually monitor all of the developments of
not at
locations and things like that.
Not at all. I know of productions that have taken place offshore or interstate, and the creatives from the agency and the client don't travel until the day of the shoot. No, that's not true. Don't travel until the day before the shoot, so that they can be on location for the shoot.
But there's actually no need anymore for either the creatives or the client to go to the shoot, is there, Clive?
No, not at all, Darren. I expounded this probably about 5 years ago, when streaming was just. When I say streaming, I mean personal streaming. I mean, we've had Netflix and Stan and all those people streaming for quite a while, but we've also had personal streaming, where you can live stream from your iPhone to somebody. And I mean, the police are well aware of this, because they get live streamed when they're doing untoward things to protesters and all sorts of people. So it's not uncommon, and it's not difficult. So
yeah, I mean, Facebook and YouTube provide streaming, and you can make those private streaming.
Yes,
but then there's lots of other platforms that will do that.
Exactly. I would suggest that if you were shooting interstate or whatever, and you were staying in your lockdown state, that you would engage a production company that was on top of streaming. Now, they would stream from the principal camera, of course, and they would also stream, I think, from an overall
location
camera, just sort of covering the camera in the foreground and the crew working, etc., etc. So that, because what happens is that your principal camera is on all the time. When it's being shifted, or they're changing batteries, or they're pulling the hard drives out, all sorts of things, that it actually goes down. So you'd have to have a separate camera to keep the stream open, to put it bluntly, and that's not too hard to do. But
Clive, sorry, we've got a couple of questions here. Do you think it's a longer process for approvals using online streaming or online approval process?
No, because you're streaming it to the brand manager or the
agency.
The agent. Well, you're streaming it to the client as well as the agency. But Darren, just think about it. Just think about this. When you go to a shoot, there's usually a tent, or they're usually called easy ups because they're just a roof. And there's a line of half a dozen to 8, maybe 10 directors' chairs in front of a monitor. And that's where the agency and the client sit. And they watch the monitor. They don't dare venture out onto the location or the set. So, I mean, all you're doing is shifting that facility to everybody's desktop computer or laptop computer, whether they're at home or in the office or wherever they are. So they're getting exactly what they're seeing through the monitor in the I can't remember what.
I mean, literally what you're saying is that the agency personnel and the client personnel could have on their computer or their phone a window open that's constantly just streaming. And then you could do something like a text message or a WhatsApp to say, hey, we need you to look at this now because we need a decision. We need the approval now.
Exactly. So in the downtime,
get on with your day job.
Get on with your day job. Yeah, they can be creative artistically or in the marketplace or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's always been the chagrin of the agency and the clients when they lose their key personnel to a shoot. It's those people need to be on tap. Almost all the time for various questions and bits and pieces. And when they're away, the whole process slows down.
There's another question here, and I think I know the answer because almost every film production quote that I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years has had mobile broadband on location. And the question is, would there be an additional cost associated with setting the remote video streaming feed for the client? Do you think there'd be a major cost in actually setting this up?
Not a major cost, Darren. There would be some cost, of course. You'd have to have a coordinator on set, supplied by the production company. So you've got one extra person, but you're saving the travelling and catering costs of half a dozen, if not more, other people. But the point you make about on-location broadband access, I mean, it's cheap and cheery these days. When that first came into, started appearing on the quotes, it was because it was quite expensive and you had to have a modem and all sorts of stuff that, at the time was expensive. Now it's still in the quotes, because they can whack $50 on it or $100 or whatever. But in reality, you'd be lucky to be paying $5 between everybody that was on location and their access to the internet. You can be, your own phone can be a mobile hotspot. Let's get realistic about this. I mean, those days of charging like wounded bulls for that sort of stuff are over, or they should be over.
Look, there's an example here. It's from the New Zealand government of a concept. I just want to share it. And it's probably a prime example of a very cheap but a quite successful way of actually shooting even during lockdown. Let me just share that with you.
COVID-19.
It's like nothing we've ever faced.
I'm no expert, but this is a big deal.
The virus is all up in our faces now.
Things could get tough.
Our humanity will be tested.
Whānau, we have work to do.
COVID-19, you dick.
We need to set a target and go for it.
Work hard, smash it.
We must act.
Every single one of us.
Unite. Everyone needs to dig deep. We must be calm now.
Be kind.
And be patient.
Don't panic.
Don't be an egg.
Listen to the experts.
When you're asked to do something, do it. Please.
Unless you're being asked to buy all the toilet paper, don't do that. You don't need to buy all the toilet paper.
A bit of aroha goes a long way.
Let's all unite against COVID-19.
Together, united, all of us. We got this.
Okay, so pretty much it looks like they just put a brief out and got everyone to either do a selfie shoot or get a friend to shoot them. Is that your interpretation?
That's my interpretation. The other side of me makes me think that they actually had a crew go out there and they recropped and changed the audio to make it look like that. But getting them to do it themselves is quite acceptable these days. All you have to do is look at a current affair program, and they've got professors from all around the world and all around the country sitting in their offices at home, and some of them have got shocking video reproduction because they've got a thumbprint on their camera on their computer, stuff like that. I mean,
yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's true.
Acceptable.
The sound quality was actually quite good in that, wasn't it? Which you would not get if it was just being recorded off a telephone.
Oh no! If you listen to it, you can hear echo and stuff like that, which a sound recordist in his right mind wouldn't let through. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but then again, you can have a sound recordist with a mic 2 inches away from those people picking up perfect sound. It's like when in a film or whatever or a TV series when they're having a telephone conversation. They degrade the audio so that it sounds like it's coming through a phone. So in this case, they've probably degraded the audio so it sounds like it's coming through a video microphone on the side of your computer or whatever, or the mic on your smartphone.
Now back to shooting. Shooting on location versus shooting in a studio.
Yeah.
Are there any considerations that people would need to think of, or is it pretty much, just the normal?
Not related to COVID-19, Darren. In fact, if you were shooting outside, you could probably have less restrictions if that was the case. But just like any location, whether it's interior or exterior, you've got to take into mind weather considerations and things like that. But I mean, that's nothing that you don't deal with on a standard production.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I say, COVID-19 doesn't directly affect that decision about interior or exterior. I mean, it's usually driven by the cheapness, and exterior you don't have to light as much as an interior. There are things like that to take into account.
Yeah, and obviously exterior, there's weather days and
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so then that gets us to post-production.
Yeah.
So we've got our footage now. It's interesting because we started off talking about either existing footage or library footage, and that's one way. Or if you've shot it either from multiple sources or from one source, that all comes together in online editing.
Correct. Yep.
Now, I know from personal experience, most of the art directors I worked with would spend hours and hours sitting there with the editor, if they had half the chance, picking all the shots they could remember. That's, of course, if the director didn't shoo them away and want to do it himself.
That's right. Well, the standard procedure is to give the director his head and you get the director's cut. And it's only then that the agency come in and pick it to bits and say, wasn't there a better take, or et cetera, et cetera. So those things can still be done, but remotely, as we're suggesting, for all the components of a production. People don't need to go to an editing facility to see it, and the editor can put together 5, 6, 10 different versions if he or she likes, and show it to the agency, and they can discuss it and say, what about this, etc., etc., and do it all all from their desks.
So, because most of the offline editing is just, I guess, in a way, a very high-powered computer, isn't it? So, doing things like screen sharing and video conferencing, like we're doing now, should be de rigueur.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just it's a hangover from the old days when you were using film. And obviously you had to go to the editing suite to watch them on the Moviola or the Steenbeck editing the film. And we haven't shot anything on film for probably 8 or 9 years now. And yet the industry still is locked into the old way of doing things.
Come on, Clive. We know it's because they have the best catering. Come on.
That's right.
You and I both walk around still today with a good belly because we've enjoyed the catering at our clients' expense.
Exactly. And once again, it's like if the creatives are on the shoot, they're sadly missed at the agency where they could be working on other projects, etc. And being far more productive than they are just sitting around an editing suite while the editor, puts together a different series of shots.
So we have the offline edits, and then we once that's approved, and in a way it's sort of a blueprint of the final ad because it's dropping pieces in without visual effects and things like that. We have our visual effects and our online edit. Now there's a really good example, which is the latest Nike campaign, of which there's one ad particularly that it's clear that they've used existing footage. So there would have been quite a significant search. And I just want to share that with everyone now, if they haven't seen it. This one from Nike.
We're never alone. And that is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one. When we're held back, we'll go farther and harder. If we're not taken seriously, we'll prove that wrong. And if we don't fit the sport, we'll change the sport. We know things won't always go our way.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But whatever it is, we'll find a way. And when things aren't fair, we'll come together for change.
We have a responsibility
to make this world a better place. And no matter how bad it gets, we will always come back stronger. Because nothing can stop what we can do together.
Okay. So look, I'm not a particularly big sports fan, but watching that gives me tingles. So I have to say, creatively, to use existing stock footage, a music track, and a voiceover, which is pretty much what they've done. And as we said earlier, all those ads that all look the same, that the problem was that they didn't seem to have that sort of cut through. It'd be fascinating to see the offline edits and then the final master that we saw there, because I can imagine there's a lot of visual effects in there.
Yes and no. Does what they've done with matching body sizes, right, is quite easily done these days. I mean, on a laptop computer, a powerful laptop computer, you can change image sizes pixel by pixel and match them that way, and take the corner of a frame and blow it up quite considerably, depending on the quality of the original source, and shift them around. It's not,
So you mean scaling and moving those
Yep.
so that they line up would have been
Yep.
but you couldn't have done that, could you, on an offline edit?
Yes, yeah. Offline is becoming more and more like online these days. Yeah, in fact, a lot of agencies will show their clients an offline, which is probably only 20% less than the online.
Right, okay.
Because of the only difference is between an offline and an online is the computing power that's used to create both. An online uses all the computing power you can get, and an offline can use 20%, 40%, up to 80% of the best quality, depending on the power of their computers.
Okay. Look, then the other part is obviously 3D animation, and whether that's pure animation, as in the whole image, or whether it's animation integrated into live action.
Yeah.
Are there any obstacles there?
Not particularly from COVID-19 at all. I mean, in fact, nothing has changed in that situation with the pandemic.
And in fact, you could probably look at a whole global perspective, because there's some terrific animation all around the world, isn't there? You could actually work with almost any animation studio that your budget would allow, because almost none of it you need to be face-to-face for.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I've worked on things where I didn't even talk to them on the phone. All they did was send me their animation up to where it was, and I'd send them an email saying what we wanted changed or ramped up, or whatever.
Now, I remember quite a few years ago, you were reviewing a production that had a crowd scene in 3D animation. Yeah. And the production company, the animation company, and the agency had allowed for each single character in the crowd to be wireframed and constructed. And you actually found a much more cost-effective library of characters that you could literally buy the wireframes and then render them in any combination that you liked.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't remember.
We won't talk about which client it was.
That's right. That's right.
It led to quite a few disputes about doing this. But the fact is that you could actually have your crowd scene relatively cost effectively with 3D animation, as long as animation was the way you wanted to go creatively.
Exactly. Or you could shoot it live action and just clone them and offset the movements a little bit. As I say, just like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings and all that situation, or the big beer ad that was famously shot in New Zealand. Looks like it's got thousands of cast, as it was in fact shot with probably about 250 people, I think. And then they were just cloned or stamped into a larger frame.
Okay. The other thing would be music and voiceovers and sound effects. So pulling the whole audio track together. Obviously, composing could be done remotely, and as it largely is now.
Yes, it is. Yeah, of course.
Well, what about recording voiceovers? Because in actual fact, I've been made aware in the last 6 months that there's now technology that allows you to record locally onto your computer hard drive and then send it afterwards as a file. So there's no transmission problems, and then it's just the quality of the microphone.
Yeah, the quality of the microphone, the quality of the room. A lot of people, you get this when you cut to the professors and the specialists on COVID in their various locations. The audio, you get echoes and all sorts of, and you can pick up background noise, etc., etc. So it's probably best to get them into a studio and record them. But once again, they can work know, 2 meters or 3 meters, or in fact, there's a double pane of glass between the technician and the person in the studio. There's no way there's going to be any transmission there. So
I'm just wondering how you sanitize the microphone spit filter. You know.
Oh well, you just change it. That is just let's face it. You just go down the store and buy another pair of pantyhose, because that's all it is.
Yeah. And then it all comes together with the final online compile, the soundtrack for approval.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think anyone is sending DVDs or dispatching any sort of. It's all files these days, isn't it?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. The bigger the file, the longer it takes to download, etc., etc. And some agencies would insist that their clients were only shown, ultra HD things, but that's it. All it is just time consuming.
Yeah.
But still easily done. Now, Darren, back to this approval process. I also think that if you were shooting and you had an online editor at the shoot who was downloading the camera feed into his computer, you could actually have a cut of the commercial, considering perhaps product shots or library shots weren't put in. But you could have a cut of the commercial at the end of the day, and everybody could go, "Yeah, that's good," or whatever, and it would be a great tool to get everybody to collaborate, because you would all see that it had worked. And if the online editor used the director's choice of takes, you would see it work. The director wanted it to work.
Yeah. So you could actually not, the old film days, you used to shoot, send the film off to be processed, get the rushes back, check the rushes, then have to edit it together. What you're saying is you could actually get fairly close to instant acceptance that you've got what you need in the can.
Exactly.
An old film term, but you've got what you need captured, and then move ahead into post-production.
Exactly, and that would compress the post-production thing as well, because everybody has seen and agreed with the director's cut. Now, if they don't agree with it, they can get the director to lengthen the product shot or all the other things that they insist on. Rightly so.
Look, we've only got 10 minutes. So before we sort of wrap up this conversation, I just want to remind people, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them on either the chat area or through the Q&A, okay? So Clive, what do you think are the opportunities creatively and from a production point of view during COVID? Or are we doomed to see more cuts of just the existing footage with a nice piano track and a voiceover and some graphics?
No, I think that the advertisers can get on with their job, which is promoting the brand and new products and all the stuff, not just making COVID ads to say that we're here for you, but they can just get on with their job of advertising new products and all that sort of stuff by everybody's sort of taken the defeatist attitude of the COVID situation and gone, oh, we can't do anything. And so we'll just do this commercial saying that we're here for you out of stock shots, when in fact they can be getting on with the art of advertising for their clients.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's so many opportunities, but doesn't it also require the agencies, the clients and the production companies, but probably more so the agencies, to embrace new ways of working? And we've probably seen that happening through necessity. But in the past, I know a lot of these innovations that we're seeing now, when you've suggested them, the client has been told by the agency, it's just impossible. We couldn't possibly stream from the shoot. We can't possibly do the edit on location. We can't possibly, and it goes on and on.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the agencies have got a vested interest in keeping things the way they are, financially, basically.
So you think it's more about if it not broke, don't fix it, rather than finding
Yeah,
new
rather
ways.
than being innovative and coming. I mean, they'd still be shooting on film if all the labs hadn't have shut down. Because film is the art's medium, but they've been proven wrong, and video's fantastic.
Okay, someone's asked, when talking about video live feed, do we also mean audio for real-time feedback loop? So, yeah, I guess it would depend on the platform you use, wouldn't it? If you're just streaming into YouTube, there wouldn't be any audio feedback, but there'd definitely be audio and video from the source.
That's right. That's right. So what I would suggest is that you actually get a production company that is in a specialist streamer, and that they take care of the audio and the video for you.
Yeah. The other thing would be just to have the feedback loop through some other channel, such as, dare I say it, a telephone.
Yes,
there's also an allowance for mobile phones on almost every shoot as well.
Exactly. I mean, yes, of course, everybody, the agency and the client and the actual production crew can all be in contact via mobiles. But it would be great. Well, if there was dialogue involved, of course, you'd love to see lip sync as an agency and as a client, because the emotion, etc., is very important. But I don't see any reason why it can't be streamed as well.
Oh, absolutely! It could take both video and audio into a streaming platform. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I, our lips are moving in sync with what we're saying. I mean, and this is just what is it? Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah. It's
yeah.
Zoom.
So if we can do it on an app, I'm sure that the technical boffins down at AAV or somewhere like that can deliver an excellent image with excellent audio. Let's face it. When you're thinking about audio and you say to yourself, "Oh golly, it's coming through my speaker on my computer," well, let me say this to you: that the speakers on TV sets, unless you've got a sound bar, of course, is a lot less than. Yeah, so. You're getting a real feel for it. I always remember being at a sound session and the audio engineer would say, well, that's it in surround sound coming through the B&O speakers. Now I'll play it through the 6-inch speaker, which is what most people would hear at home. So,
no, it's true. And then on broadcast, I mean, we now have digital streaming, but on terrestrial broadcast, you also relied on that bent coat hanger as the aerial and the interference from the nearest electronic device at home. But apart from that, I mean, the purpose is to get the best possible quality, technical quality, so that any degrading in the broadcast is actually minimises and makes sure that it comes through clear.
So if you were the copywriter, for instance, you could plug a very expensive pair of headphones into your computer and get it as high quality as you can. Yeah.
Clive, we've run out of time, but thank you so much for making yourself available and sharing your thoughts and ideas.
Okay. Well, I've almost run out of sunlight. I think you can see that I've faded over the last hour.
That's true. It's getting darker and darker. Look, thanks everyone for joining us today. There'll be recordings of this workshop available soon. If you've not already done so, please subscribe at trinityp3.com/subscribe, because that means you'll get regular updates of all the things that we're doing, including future webinars. On that topic, the next webinar next Wednesday is reducing carbon pollution in marketing communications from out of home to point of purchase. and that's with Christopher Sewell and Joy Murray. Joy's a Senior Research Fellow, Faculty of Science at the University of Sydney, and Christopher Sewell's the Managing Director of Gaia Partnership and part of the team here at Trinity P3. Clive, I want to thank you again. I want to thank everyone that joined us today, and if you want more information, it's available either through our blog, through Twitter, through LinkedIn or Facebook, and we have offices in Sydney, Singapore, London and New York. And I want to thank everyone and hope you have a great day.